Welcome to the Rebel Movement podcast. I'm your host, Haley Barnes, and for this episode, we're going to be talking about really unique and powerful ways to dramatically increase your launch conversion. And to do that, I have a very special guest with me who I connected with pretty recently on another podcast, but her methods for all things marketing have actually blown me away. So I knew I had to get her on this podcast to share them. So everybody, please welcome Sophia Parra.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here finally.
Finally, I know we because we're both traveling so much at the
Yeah.
moment, it took a few reconnects, but we're good. I'm actually so excited for this episode as well, and I know like the methods for launching are just something that no one that I'm in circles with really talk about. So I'm so excited to share these. But I really would love you to introduce yourself and just let everyone know who you are, how you got to where you got to, because I know your story is so incredible as well.
Thank you. Yes, I'd love to. So I'm Sophia Parra. I'm so used to calling myself a social media strategist because that's kind of how I started this whole thing maybe 7 years ago now. Gosh, that's bananas to think about. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I am so used to calling myself a social media strategist, but actually as of this year, I really need to stop calling myself that because I actually shut down my membership and created a completely new membership to replace it that goes far beyond social media. So let's call myself a marketing strategist now. But I did start it with a social media agency. I did that for several years, almost five, I think. And I really worked with like coaches for a full 5 years. A lot of them were clients with me for almost the entire time. So I really got to understand what kind of strategies worked in the long term and not just like the quick short term. So I'm not about hacks. I'm not about like
Mhm.
things that are just like, oh, quick engagement, this and that. I really am not about that. I'm about building a business that actually lasts, about create like putting legs on your business so that it travels around the world without you feeling like you have to be creating content all the time. That's really what I'm about. And what's bananas is that a lot of that I still do that on social media. People don't think that that's possible, but because of my relationship first approach to social media and in almost everything I do, it actually is possible, but you have to be focused on different metrics. So that's really like at the core of a lot of what I do. And as I kind of alluded to, I'm going through a massive transition right now. I'm kind of going from being known for as like the social media girl who talked a lot about relationships to now really talking about marketing concepts in general.
Mhm.
And just a couple of months ago, I shut down my social media agency. Sorry, not my agency, my social media membership. So I
Mhm.
shut down my agency a few years ago, and now I've shut down my membership, and I'm moving into a different membership called Pocket CMO. And that was a huge shock to people because I am obsessed with my membership. I loved it so much, but I felt a shift in the marketing world. I felt people were really starting to wake up to, you know what? This is not how I want to feel at my business. I don't want to be
Yes.
chained to my social media account. I don't want to not be able to take a vacation because I have to like hit publish on that post. Like I'm so done with marketing this way. And I wanted to create a membership that made room for people who wanted to market their business and wanted to build relationships, but just didn't want to do it that way.
Mm.
So yeah, so that's the era I am moving into.
I love that eras, your new era. We'll bring
Yes.
Taylor Swift into the podcast somehow. But yeah, like I remember speaking with you about this because for obviously people who don't know my background, I went through a very similar transition. I had a copywriting agency. I was doing that for 3.5 years, and there was a disconnect with me, because for me personally, that business model didn't fit with the lifestyle that I wanted to live at the moment. So I really relate when you say that, right? Like you're leading people to have marketing strategies that work on their terms so that they can have businesses that they love and then therefore lives that they love. And it's really the ethos of the rebel movement and why we create it. But yeah, it's incredible hearing you go through that. And I just remember like drawing back on my own experience. It was such a big identity shift for me to release that copywriting agency, copywriter, like that terminology and what I was known for, obviously having such a great client base, very purpose driven women would come to me and ask me to write copy. And it was hard letting all that go. It was really, really tough.
Yeah.
And like moving more into consulting, which I do now. But yeah, like what do you do you find that there was like a point in your journey where you were like, I really need to make this shift? Like what was that for you?
Oh my gosh. You know, I had different moments in both businesses when I shut down the social media agency and then I shut down the social media membership.
Mm.
I think with the agency, I had more of a wake up call in my personal life. My husband had a stroke, and in the same year, my dad had had cancer, but his cancer miraculously disappeared through some alternative treatment. And so he had a tumor the size of a golf ball in his mouth that disappeared in like
Wow.
45 days or something like that after getting some like next level treatment in Germany that doesn't even exist in the States, which is bananas to me.
Wow.
But,
Yeah.
and don't get me wrong, we had to pay a fortune for it and all this and all that. And then his cancer ended up coming back and we had no more money and insurance wouldn't pay for it. So he had to do a Western therapy and it ended up killing him in 30 days. It was like a very hard experience. However,
Mm.
that last year when the cancer came back, because it went away for 4 years and then it came back,
Mm.
and that was also the year my husband had a stroke. So I had this really, oh, and it was 2020. So COVID was going on. It was
Oh,
just the
oh, just to
most,
throw that one in there as well. Yeah,
I
2020.
know, it was
Wow.
just the
Yeah.
most insane year.
Hmm.
And yeah, and I just had this wake up call where I was like, I just, when my husband had a stroke, especially, there was a big wake up call because the day before his stroke, I was really busy. I mean, I had been busy for a very long time. Like I was basically working 21 hours a day. But the day before his stroke, for some reason, that really hit hard for me because
Mm.
we had just moved into a new apartment. We were really excited. It was all new and pretty and all this stuff. But I decided to spend the night in our old apartment because I had a Wi-Fi there and we didn't have the Wi-Fi set up in the new apartment. So I was like, I'm gonna stay in our old apartment. And I'm saying like I like roughed it. Like I had my air mattress, there like the AC, all the power was shut off. So like there was no AC, no heater, and it was like dead of winter. And New York City winter is not like no joke. You know what I mean? And I stayed there for the Wi-Fi so that I could like wake up early and work. And I was just like making all these decisions about that. And my husband
Yeah.
has sent me this really goofy video showing himself dancing. I think he was even naked, dancing naked in our new apartment. And he was like, I missed you. Like, I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Anyways, the next morning he had a stroke. And I, he is okay today, but it took over 6 months for him to get back to
Yeah.
normal. He had a stroke, he lost his short-term memory, and he was a completely different person for like quite a while. And
Mm.
I felt, even though he was alive and physically in front of me, there was something that died that day. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
I felt, yeah, it gets me emotional sometimes thinking about it. But I
Yeah.
kind of felt like I was never going to see my husband again.
Yeah.
And there was something that really felt so painful about the fact that I chose a Wi-Fi connection over
Mm.
spending the night. And I don't even know if my husband remembers this, right? Because it's just not part of us now. Thank God he's okay and he is back to normal and all that stuff. Thank
Yeah.
God, I'm so lucky. But it could have been so different. And there was
Yeah.
something about that moment that really woke something up in me. And then, of course, my dad was dying and I moved in with him. This was months later, but I in with him to take care of him as he was dying, and he did die, and he had a lot of regrets about how he lived his
Yeah.
life too. And I'm very much like my dad. I can really be a workaholic.
Mm.
So I had a lot of personal wake up calls that made me realize I don't want this kind of a business model where I'm my agency was really built on other people's terms, right? It was really I had to be up for them. I had to show up for them. It was their message that I was sharing with the world. And even though I loved my clients and I believed in their messages or I wouldn't have had them as clients, I also had a message. I also
Yeah.
had things I wanted to do and I wasn't doing things for myself. I
Yeah.
was basically a business owner who was an employee, you know? That was such a huge wake up call for me. And these awful things that happened in my personal life really like amplified that wake up call. But that is what moved me out of that business. But then I started a membership and I love my membership so much. I still love it. It's our last week in this membership before we move into the next one. And I'm like, I cry like every day about it because there's a grieving process around it, even though I know it's
Yeah.
the right decision.
Mm-hmm.
However, I had a huge wake up call at the end of last year when I decided to do this. or around then anyway. And that was the burnout that I was experiencing, the working around the clock thing that I was experiencing. Somehow, even though I had rebuilt the business to not have that kind of lifestyle, even though I had
Mhm.
just done everything different to avoid that, somehow I had created a business again where I was working around the
Mm.
clock, where I had no boundaries, where I was running everything on some other people's terms. And I realized in that moment, it's not the business, it's me. Like I'm the
Yeah.
fucking problem.
Yeah.
Like, because it's a completely different business model and I have the exact same problems. How is that even possible? You know?
Wow.
And so I went to therapy and now I'm figuring out that stuff in a different container and trying to understand, why am I a people pleaser? Why do I suck at boundaries? Like,
Mm.
why do I just keep choosing these patterns? And I'm learning a lot about myself. Um, but that those are like the personal reasons. And then of course, the bigger reasons, like what I said in my intro, was just that the world of marketing is changing, and these issues that I'm having are issues other people are having as well.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
wanted to have the kind of membership that kind of made space for that, like made room for
Mm.
nuance and different ways to market your business, and didn't say, everyone, this is how everyone needs to market your business, plug and play yourself into the strategy.
Yeah.
No, what if we had a marketing membership that helped you discover what your marketing system looked like and then gave you the tools to bring it to life? It is big and broad, and like I said when we were talking before the interview, not the kind of thing anyone would recommend selling, because
Yeah. Right.
it's like unclear what the
Hard.
result is, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like that, in my opinion, is what's missing from the market. Like, we have to stop looking at marketing like, oh yeah, that person over there, it's working for them, so I'm just going to do whatever they're doing. I
Exactly.
guarantee you that will not work. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
need a space that's, and a lot of people, this is why they go into one-on-one coaching, because they feel like they need that extra attention. And you know what? You might, but not everyone has a budget for that.
Yeah.
So I tried to create a membership that allowed for the one-on-one and also the group setting, and was more in budget for people, but delivered insane resources to stop feeling like you have to live on your computer all day long, but you can still market your business with this content that we're told we should be creating, and you can discover what that looks like for you. So,
Yeah.
oh wow, I just
That's
went through
powerful.
in so many fucking directions. But to answer your
I'm here for
question,
it. Yeah,
those
no,
are
I
the
mean, it was a
transitions.
very, yeah, no, it was a very, I don't want to say loaded question, but it was very like, this could go in a lot of different ways. So you do you, but like, there's so many things that, like, first of all, thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your story. Because it's, like, it's, this happens so many times. I've worked with clients before where, they've fallen ill themselves and they're not able to carry their group coaching container that they've just sold out on a launch for. And what the fuck do they do? Because like then they have to refund everything and then their business falls to the ground. Like, helping them create like freedom-based businesses and really
Yep.
sustainable systems, right? And I've worked with people like that, and it's awful to hear them stories, and you know and kind of experience it secondhand, and also what I've been through personally as well, like, has really shaped my business. But like, I think it's so important to highlight it because, like, you can be in that situation any day of
Yep.
the week, any year. Like, you can be in that situation. Like, how is your business going to survive without you? And that's not putting the scarers into anyone. I'm really not trying to do that, but it is something to be so aware with. And like you say, it's not just strategy based. We're big marketing nerds, we're big strategists ourselves. I know we are, but it's that mindset work of, like, you know, not representing or recreating them previous patterns that you had where you were burning yourself out and working so hard,
Yeah.
but really doing the mindset work to build that life that you want to live as well. And I mean, that's why we built the Rebel Movement membership, is because we want to balance strategy, we want to balance energetics, we want to balance alignment, and we want someone to come in there and be like, hey, I want to do business my way. Like, give me some clues on how to do that. I'll take what I need from it and then I can flourish. So yeah, like, so like it's a hard thing to do, and I think that's what's ballsy about, like, your membership, my membership. Like, it is hard because the messaging isn't, "You get X and Y if you
Yeah.
invest Z." Like, it's really not, and it's there's so many ways that you can wrap it up, but it's finding that most powerful one that really resonates with people. So, I'm so excited to see this
Exactly.
membership. I'm gonna join your membership now. I'll be like, "I'm there. I'm doing it as well." But yeah, I know we're obviously going to be talking about launch. We could go on a massive detour right now. We could talk about memberships for crying out loud. But like, we'll stick to talking about launches because I know that when we first connected, I was, like I said, blown away by some of the methods that you were talking about, and really just from marketer to marketer being like, oh yeah, like when when I've personally launched something, sometimes I skip this step because of
Yeah.
time and all these
Yeah.
things. So I know for you personally, a lot of that comes down to connection based marketing. So, can you basically share your methods, but especially ones that I know will be so powerful for people listening, are like the nurture events that you host that you really relish with and have seen your conversion rates skyrocket because of them, and any other kind of like market research that you do to really amplify your launches?
Yes, the truth is, and you know this, there's like so many different directions I could go with this
Mhm.
topic because kind of as I was saying earlier, like at the core of everything I talk about is really how are you creating connection with your audience? Now, everyone puts this out there. Everyone's like, create connection with your audience. And we talk about all things that work and that I believe in as well, like creating vulnerable content and like all that stuff to make sure
Mhm.
that there is a connection to be had and people feel close to you and they trust you. And that is all very, very true. But actually, what I'm referring to when I say that is how are you having conversations with your people? If
Yeah.
you are putting up a post and waiting for engagement or sending out an email and waiting for a reply, that's not what I'm talking about. I do hope that happens for you. And I also look for those things. But I'm actually talking about like an event that is happening where people can raise their hand and you can create what I call a warm list.
Mm.
And a warm list, when we talk about warm lists, we're talking about our email list primarily, right? They're the warmest list that we typically have. It's and they're warmer than our social media following, let's say, because on social media, it's quite, I mean, people just follow and unfollow people all the time. But with your
Mhm.
email, handing over that email address is a transaction, and so that is just a heavier weighted list than a social media following, which they're kind
Yeah.
of fickle. Do you know what I mean? Like they'll come and go. But the email list, like if you have people coming in and they're staying, like they are a lot warmer to you and they're a lot more likely to buy from you. So we're kind of taking that idea, but now we're going even warmer, right? So now we've
Mhm.
got this email list. How can we actually get people off of that email list to raise their hand and say, like, I'm interested in this topic that you talk about, or I want to know more about this, or like, just like literally tell us that they're watching us, because that way we can honestly make personal invitations when it comes time to make personal invitations. Like, there's more we can work with.
Yeah.
And I'll get more specific about that in a second, but really the benefit of this is for the person who's listening, who's like, I launch, I do all the things I'm told to do, but I don't have a big email list. I
Mhm.
wish I did, but it's not growing the way that I did. So does that mean I will never have a six-figure launch, or I will never have these big flashy numbers that I so badly want because it's going to take me 10 years to grow my email list? And
Yeah.
to be honest, if you did it the way so many people do it, yeah, you are probably going to be waiting, especially if you have a low ticket offer, if you have, you know what I mean? You probably
Yeah.
will be waiting 10 years to get the kind of numbers to have a six-figure launch for an offer that's less than $1,000. Like
Yeah.
you probably will. And that, I don't think people really let that sink in.
Yeah.
But you can do it that way. That way works. But for most of the people that I talk to, they're in the process of building their email list. So
Mhm.
their big juicy goal isn't, I mean, and I love being Delulu and I love thinking big and I love all of that and I do all of that. And also, I think there has to be some reality thinking here as well, because otherwise it's going to be really hard not to think you're the problem if it doesn't work out
Yeah.
for you. And
Oh
it's
yeah.
probably not. It's probably you just don't have the numbers, and you will one day, but you don't today. So the real question is, how can we make it more likely that our list is going to convert? And that is to actually be having conversations with your audience, actually be giving them an opportunity to say yes to the thing that you want to talk about. So there's a couple of ways that I do this. The one that I talk about all the time, but I really do think it's so good, is I mean, there's lots of different kinds of nurture events, but this one is called my Q&A text list party.
Okay.
And I do this on my text list, but you don't have to do it on a text list if you don't have a text list. Essentially, what it is it's like a surprise free day of coaching. And I send an email to my email list one morning and I say, hey, today only, like free coaching until 3 p.m. Eastern. Here's what you do. You're going to text this phone number, and it's like, again, the service that I have. So you're going to text this phone number. You're going to give me a question, and I'm going to answer them first come, first serve until 3 p.m. If I don't get to you, that means, you weren't the first, I don't know, I can't remember how I word it, but I'm like, if I don't get to you by 3 p.m., like I'll get you on the next one or whatever it might be, right? So I put a lot of boundaries on this. I give them examples of what a great question is that I can answer today and what a not so great question is. Because I've had people be like, can you listen to this podcast episode and tell me how I did? I'm like, dude, that's not the kind of question we do
Maybe
here, right?
not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the reason I do this is, first, there's several reasons I do this. One, it trains people to talk to me, right? People are absorbing our content and not saying a damn thing to us. I
Yes.
just spoke to someone inside of my membership right now. Actually, I spoke to 3 people in the last month that are having this problem. They have very high open rates, no replies, no clicks, no nothing. And so this is part of helping with that. Now, the first 2 people, I gave them some tips and they changed that. The last one, though, even with the tips, it's not budging. They are not talking to her, right? And so this is a problem. People face this. And one of the
Yeah.
reasons why I feel like I'm sure I'll have this problem again one day, but I used to have this problem, I don't anymore, is because I have these kinds of textless parties. And these people feel comfortable asking me questions. They feel comfortable talking to me. I don't sell to them the first time we talk. So they don't feel like they're in danger of being sold to if they even show that they're interested, right? So
Yeah.
I train them to feel safe with me because they are safe with me. I'm never going to do that to them. And they have a relationship with me. And so they do. They ask me about the programs I sell. They feel like we're friends.
Friend,
So
exactly.
they just come out and they ask me. But then I'm very clear. I now have information about what they are interested in. So when they
Yeah.
ask me a question, they're like, well, here's my problem. I'm not getting engagement on my email list. I actually have, like, for certain people where I'm like, ooh, they'd be a perfect fit for pocket CMO. I actually have a list of people where I'm like, oh, okay, Haley asked me about email engagement, perfect fit for pocket CMO. And I just keep track of that stuff because when it is time, when I have a webinar to sell pocket CMO or anything like that, I can say, Haley, you asked me that question about email lists like 2 months ago, and I'm doing a free webinar next week, and we're going to talk about that. Is this still something that you're struggling with, or do you want to come and sit on the webinar? It's totally free, and I'm going to teach you 3 tips for X, Y, and Z. And I just think it really fits the question you asked. Like, let me know what you think. And simply because I remembered the problem
Yep.
and I've showed up to give a solution to that problem, simply that right there makes it more likely that they will show up on the call, that they will take action on the call, and that whether they join or not, they will feel seen. And
Exactly.
that's the
Yeah.
whole point here.
Yeah.
How can you make your audience feel seen? And if you can make your audience feel seen, not only will an invitation into a program make sense and not feel slimy, but also they're more likely to see the invitation because that's how these algorithms work. Like the more in touch you are with these people, the more they actually see you. So that's like one example of a nurture event. There is a beginning, middle, and end. It's not like, oh yeah, my nurture event is that I post on social and I wait for engagement. No, because that's ongoing. That's content. A nurture event has a beginning and an end. It's an event. It gives you the information you need to make a personal invitation later. And then finally, it is something that you actually, like, the job ain't done until the personal invitation is made. So for me, the entire objective of nurture events is to eventually make a personal invitation or know not to, because sometimes people aren't right for these things and I will not invite them, you know? So that's like in a nutshell what a nurture event is. And I can give way more examples if you want more, but just to give you a minute, because I know I just talked a lot.
Yeah. No, it's so just interesting to hear like your perspective on it. And like as marketers, we do this research and we look for opportunities to have this research, but you're just like giving so much on the front end
Mhm.
that it's really not even a case of if they're going to buy from you, it's when.
Yes.
Because you're building such a level of trust, and they respect you because they feel seen, they feel heard, they know that you know your shit, right? Like
Yes.
they've been through that experience. So it's a case of, okay, when the right thing comes up for me, I'm all in. Like I don't care what it is. Like here's my money. Like it's not even like a monetary transaction. It's a, hey, like you did me good, like back in the day, like I am there for you. So, and they know that they're
Yes.
going to get results because they've probably implemented what you've said and have seen the results as well. So, yeah, when I remember when we spoke about it last time, which is why I was like, you'd be so good to come on this podcast and really see that launch, like flourish because you've implemented these things prior and you've observed and you've kept track and you've seen the data and like not just the data from the back end, the data from the front end, so you know what direction to take your launches, you know what hooks are going to convert better for like
Yep.
masterclasses, and you know that people are going to show up for that because they've told you 3 months ago they're already interested.
Yes.
So it takes the guesswork out of it, which is just
Mhm.
so, so powerful. And it's so much more predictable monetary wise when you don't have to keep guessing about these things or trialing them and testing them. So yeah, no, I love that. It's an incredible way to do it. So yeah. Is there somewhere that you have like a blog or like part of your email list? Do you kind of like talk through like how to actually implement this into your own business?
Yeah, so I actually just recently did I mean, anyone who's listening to this is probably also listening to Cubicle CEO, to Cubicle to
Mm-hmm.
CEO, because Ellen is such like a boss at like marketing concepts. But we actually had a conversation about this when I was testing it over a year ago.
Uh-huh.
And then after a year of testing it, what ended up happening is 100% of the people that I had conversations with, some of them it took a year, but 100%, almost 100%, one person did not convert, but almost 100%
Mm.
of the people I spoke to in 2023 converted in some capacity. Whether I
Wow.
have an offer that's $7, I have an offer that's $4,500.
Yeah.
It could have been any offer, but everyone paid me something
Yeah.
as a result of the conversations I had. And like I said, it wasn't necessarily one day. A lot of them did happen very quickly, but some of them it took an entire year, but 100% conversion, which is almost unheard of, right?
Yeah.
And
I mean, insane.
I was stunned as well. So she had me on to do a whole case study on it, and she
Mm.
asked a lot of questions. She asked for templates about the emails I send. So that's the most thorough piece of content out on the internet right now, if that's something that people want to listen to. I also, inside of Pocket CMO, a huge conversation is nurture events, because how I help people with their marketing systems is I essentially ask you 3 questions every quarter. How are you growing this quarter? How are you selling this quarter? And how are you nurturing this quarter? If you have an
Yeah.
answer for each of those questions, and they don't always have to be big, right?
Mhm.
You might be doing small efforts for them because life's happening and it just has to be small.
Mhm.
But if you are doing something for each of those every quarter, your business will grow, because
Yeah.
those are the only metrics that actually matter, right? So that really stops us from focusing on shiny objects and all the things. So all of
Yeah.
that to say, one of the things that I have inside of Pocket CMO is like, that's really how we split things up, right? So I'm teaching you different kinds of growth efforts, different kinds of nurturing efforts, and different kinds of sales efforts. And I am going to do a whole training on Q&A text parties, because I will say, for anyone listening who's just like, I want to do this, but I don't have a text list. I
Yeah,
have a
right?
client who did this with their email. So they
Okay.
used an app called Video Ask.
Mhm.
And they basically were like, today only free coaching, same thing, but they're like, reply with your question, right? Now, the reason I did on the Q&A on the text list originally was because I wanted to grow my text list, but also because it was something I could just like be on my phone all day and just like
Yeah,
be in
right.
line at Starbucks and like texting them. Do you know what I mean? So I liked the idea of it being texting. It just felt more intimate.
Mhm.
But people do it over email too. And what the way to make that intimate vibe is reply with a video instead. So reply, like hit record, and then they're going to get a response from you. It's going to feel less copy paste. It's going to feel more direct to them. It's just going to give that vibe. So my point being is, we're going to walk through like different ways to do this inside of Pocket CMO, but outside of Cubicle to CEO, that's really where to get all the information.
Love it.
But Cubicle to CEO's podcast, I have to say, she asked me a lot of great questions that I did not hold back.
I was gonna say, I can imagine you like give everything away in that.
I
So.
do. I believe in that, to be honest. And I think this is
Mm,
something part of the nurturing, actually. I think people do need to hear this. There's a lot of advice out there that's like, don't give it, like, make sure they pay for it. Like,
mm,
just give them, and not that these are the words they use, but give them surface level so that they don't like you, so that they know that they have to pay to get more. I have to say, I don't really believe in that, because I think there's a lot of good shit on the internet, and if you are
yeah.
going to stand out, if you are going to be someone that people are like, oh, she knows more than I do. Oh, this
Mm,
is not something I'm going to find on Google.
yeah.
If you are going to be that person to someone, you have to be willing, in the name of your relationship with this person, you have to be willing to give them the good stuff. Because, my friend, there is so much more where that came from. Like, believe that, because I think that's the thing.
Exactly.
People are like,
Hmm.
oh, but then like I'm gonna give them the best stuff and then they're not gonna come. Like, girl, you got so like there's so much more good shit. Like, do not worry about it, right? But if
Yeah.
you are going to impact them, you can't be afraid to give them the good stuff. And I think that's the other part of the nurture events, right? Like, people are, so you're
Mm,
basically giving a free coaching, like 5 minutes to this person. Like, I don't know, they have to pay for that kind of attention. Like, we have to change our mindset around this. Like, this is relationship.
yeah.
And people do not buy from people they do not trust. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people not to trust on the internet. So if you do not want to appear like that person, you have to put the relationship first. And this is just a really easy way to do that with your audience.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It doesn't have to be, it's not something you do weekly or like it's not something that
Yeah,
you do like so frequently that it burns you out. Like this could be
exactly.
something you do a couple of times a year, right? Like
Yep.
if that's something you want to do or you know that you've got a launch coming up, twice a year or even every quarter, like do the Q&As at the beginning of the quarter and then launch at the end. So you have that data, you have that trust and everything's building for you. But
Yep.
I'm like this, yeah, it's so powerful because like you said, like you can get information anywhere. Like you could Google it, you can go on ChatGPT, like you can get information
Mm-hmm.
anywhere. So like how does your experience and your expertise become the go-to area or the go-to person
Yep.
versus all these different tech assets and other people, right? How do you stick out from that? So it's really showing that so early doors, so early doors, and not gatekeeping on everything because it's going to be harder for you to sell because you'll have
Yep.
to do way more convincing.
Yes.
So yeah, and
And
which is
I
fine. If
will,
that's what you want to do, that's
yeah.
fine as well. But yeah, for me, I'm an up and buck anyway. So
Same, same. And I will add, like, speaking of launching, because I forgot, I mean, even though I hope it's clear for people on how this can be used for your launch, but I'm going to add like one extra piece in terms of timing.
Mhm.
Honestly, a great way to do this for your launch is, how I do it is, so this is literally my calendar. I promote a webinar. I like to launch with webinars. Maybe something will
Mhm.
change in 2024, but most of my experience with launching is through webinars. So I promote for 10 days. Me and my affiliates are promoting for 10 days.
Mhm.
And my first webinar is usually on a Monday. And then I do a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Friday. And I make sure my webinars are live. There are no replays. So
Mhm.
if you want to come, you got to come live. I give like a free templates on the webinar to kind of implement the thing we talk about. Like, I make sure whether you
Mhm.
buy from me or not, you are going to be thanking your lucky stars that you showed up to that webinar. Like, that is my ultimate goal. The metric I believe in the most is if my affiliates come back to me saying, oh my God, everyone thanked me so much for promoting your webinar for you. I'm like,
I
that is
love
my
that.
ultimate goal. So
Yeah.
that, like, I put time into this, right? However, right the Friday before that first webinar, I usually will do a Q&A text list party, and I will do it on the
Yeah.
topic of that webinar. So if I'm doing, like, I have a webinar that I love doing called the 38-minute content solution. So I will do a Q&A about like content, for example. So I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
coaching today, content. Now, there's lots of promotion going on about the webinar. So a lot of the people who are paying attention to my emails are signed up for the webinar.
Okay.
So they take part in the Q&A because they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited for the webinar next week, blah, 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 blah. So-and-so told me about you. This is my question. How cool is this? Blah, blah, blah. So I answer the question, and then I say, I'm so glad to hear that you're coming next week. What day are you coming? And
Mm-hmm.
so they're like, oh, I'm coming on Wednesday. I'm like, okay, awesome. I'm going to look out for you on Wednesday. This is a question I'm also going to be speaking more to on the webinar. So make sure you're there, right? And
Yeah.
without fail, because they had that contact with me, my show up rate is so much freaking higher. But then I also get people who aren't coming to the webinar, but they're excited about the Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
And now I get the opportunity to say, hey, I'm so happy you're here. Here's the answer to your question. By the way, this is a big topic for our webinar next week. Are you signed up? And they might be like, oh
Mm.
no, I have this, I have that. I'm like, oh, okay, well, like no pressure, but I have three calls. And like, if this is the problem you're solving, like you are absolutely going to find solutions at this webinar. So I really hope you can make it, because I think that you're going to find a lot of support on this webinar. And nine times out of 10, they're like, fuck yes, thank you so much. Like I'll be there. So it's like,
Mm.
it becomes another way to promote or make sure the people that are signed up actually show up. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? So
exactly.
it's a great thing to do like during that promo period, right before the first day, and just like get engagement around like, what day are you
Yeah.
coming? Like, I'm going to look out for you. Like, it just holds accountability, right?
Mm.
And then I have these warm, beautiful relationships. So I have the launch and I'm on the webinar, and usually these are the most active people in the chat because they feel
Mm-hmm.
like they know me and they feel comfortable with me. So after that, I then reach out to them and say, hey, so like I saw you in the chat, or I saw you, I'm so glad you were there, whatever it might be. Did you have any questions? Right. And
Mm.
now what ends up happening is where I'm having a conversation about what I'm selling, right? Because we've had that entire journey. They got the sales pitch. They feel good with me. I checked in with them. I'm like, was your question answered? Are there any other questions? Are you thinking about joining? Like whatever, it feels natural. We've broken the ice. We're there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now, like between following up with people who have clicked on the link, thanks to my webinar platform tells me that stuff.
Yeah.
So between that and all of these points of creating warm lists, I now have a ton of people I can reach out to and create personal invitations around and just follow up because of these warm list nurture event opportunities that I've created all along the way. And my
Mm.
conversion rate is so much higher as a result, that people feel held accountable and they feel fucking seen. And
Yeah.
again, that is the entire objective. So I just wanted to add like a piece about the
No, that's so
timing of it,
helpful. Yeah.
because it can really amplify launch results if you do it like as part of your
Yeah.
overall launch strategy.
Yeah. So I'm really multifaceted because you can do it as like a market research, a couple of months
Yes.
out, and then bring it back as almost like a
Yes.
pre-webinar bonus.
Yeah, like a
Um,
buzz, like,
yeah,
let's get ready for the
exactly.
webinar next
Like the
week.
pre-party for the
Yeah.
webinar. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. It's such a VIP experience. But yeah, this has all been so amazing. So thank you so much for sharing like
You're
your
so welcome.
story and yeah, really tangible, good to implement things. So I mean, we all know how amazing your membership's going to be, but um all the information for Sophia, where to find her on Instagram, for the wait list for Pocket CMO, which is gonna absolutely fly. I know it is. You're gonna want to jump on there. So it's all in this show notes underneath the podcast episode. And she's also giving us her freebie on 12 strategies to find and convert your next client on social media. So check that out if you want everything to do with Sophia. She is giving it all for us. So that's amazing. Thank you so much for being here. I know everyone will absolutely love this episode.
Thank you so much for having me. I had so much